scared for this show. Sometimes people or the internet decides just to hate something before they even see it. And I worry a little bit that's what's already happened to the paper. Oh no, let's give it a chance. I gave it a chance. I agree. The trailer looked bad. But, I like sitcoms. And so when they sent me 9 episodes, I was like, all right, let's watch this thing. And I fell in love with the show. I hope everybody else gives it the same chance. So let me walk you through my pitch for why you should watch and appreciate The Paper. I wish that they would work this hard in the publicity department, but I guess that they're hoping that we step in. All right, so ironically, streaming killed the network sitcom while at the same time using them as their foundation for binge viewing. Remember when all the studios started their own streaming services and there was like an arms race for the major sitcoms that everybody loves to watch? And I have to say, while they originally aired week to week or daily outside of primetime and syndication, that coveted 7 to 8 slot where you would just veg out and watch a sitcom, right? Those were good times. They try to recreate that even on streamers with that button where you can get a randomly picked episode. But I have to say, they actually also make for tremendous binges because if you watch them in order, in quick succession, while they remain light and airy, they have story arcs. Sure, some of them resolve within each episode, but I'm surprised when you again look at them as all together. The big sitcoms have these amazing arcs that play out over several episodes and sometimes across one season or multiple seasons. I was surprised at the long-term storytelling as well as the short-term storytelling. I discovered this when I myself binged them during the pandemic. I didn't understand why anybody would binge sitcoms. And then we had to stay home for a very long time. So I got into rewatching Seinfeld, Friends, The Big Bang Theory, and The Golden Girls from beginning to end. And I was able to not only revisit them, but appreciate them in ways that I'd never been able to before. It was amazing. And thankfully, it seems that streaming is now maybe trying to bring the sitcom back. For this review, I was Googling current streaming sitcoms. And I didn't agree with Google's interpretation of what a sitcom is. The Bear and Hacks do not count. Those may be 30 minutes, but they're not sitcoms as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you don't always have to have a studio audience. There's the single camera like The Office and now The Paper. But I think it's, you know it when you see it. And so, I'm curious, what's your definition of a sitcom? And again, I think sitcoms are fantastic. But some actual, I think, legit sitcoms that have been invented for streaming are The Upshaws. That was an early entry. 6 seasons so far and still going. And then others have followed suit more recently. Mid-Century Modern. I don't know if that's coming back, but I really enjoyed that. That was really funny. Matt Bomer's he's such a gifted comedian. We knew everybody else was funny, but he's really funny. And I absolutely adore Netflix's new Leanne from Sitcom King, Chuck Lorre. That guy doesn't miss. He really knows how to make a sitcom. Love Leanne. Strong recommend on that as well. But bringing back sitcoms has not worked out. Will and Grace, we tried. I'll always take more Jack. And Frasier didn't work out. I forgot to mention Frasier. I watched that during the pandemic as well. How could I forget Frasier? Brilliant. But now they're going to try spinoffs. That seems to maybe have some potential. HBO Max is doing a Big Bang Theory spinoff, which I don't think sounds that good. And now we have The Paper spinning off from The Office. And some of you don't think this sounds that good. Maybe I'll be a convert for the Big Bang Theory spinoff as well when I see it. Now, The Paper will be a binge. Thank goodness. I think this was the right move. Some people feel they're trying to get rid of it. No, they know this is how you want to watch. It's an amazing binge. There are 10 episodes, and they'll all be dropping this Thursday. And to the press, I feel they saw how we watched it, and that's one of the reasons that helped them make it a binge. Because they gave us 9 episodes, and I watched those 9 episodes in 24 hours. I had to sleep because I started them in the evening. I would have watched them. I got to be honest with you. I would have watched them all the way through if it had been a lazy afternoon. If I'd started around 11, I would have finished them in a single day. I would say by episode 2, I was hooked. Episode 1 had a few annoying things. But by episode 2, I was hot damn, I'm in. Although I spoke to a few other people in the press and it took them maybe around 3 to 4 episodes. I hope it doesn't take you that long. And then when they made the decision to go with a binge, they gave us the last episode, episode 10. And they released it like in the middle of the day. And I, as well as several other critics that I've spoken to, we all dropped what we were doing immediately to watch episode 10. That's how much we became invested in the show. And I have to say, it did not disappoint. I was so glad that I stopped what I was doing to watch it. All right, so let's discuss this show a little bit more in depth, but don't worry, without spoilers. All right, so I guess the first big question is, am I a fan of the original Office? Well, yes and no. I watched the show when it originally aired, never missed it, and I really enjoyed it. It was indeed appointment viewing back in the heyday. Well, the sitcoms had a couple of heydays, but this was definitely one of them. But I'm not a super fan. I've never gone back and rewatched it. Even during the pandemic, you can see I did not choose to rewatch that show. I really like it. I think I tried to rewatch one episode. I think that it comes across as a little bit more dated than some of the other sitcoms, which have a little bit more of a timeless feel to them. Although, of course, I know there are many Office superfans who've rewatched it many, many times. And whenever I come across GIFs, memes, and clips for the show on social media, though, I always stop and watch and chuckle. And as many of you know from my videos, I'm a very big fan of Michael Scott memes. They're fantastic. The paper is a spinoff of The Office, and it's the same format, right? It features a documentary crew. It's the same crew, which I think is very funny. Oscar often acknowledges that, covering a workplace with side interviews, which allow the audience to establish private connections and like secrets just between us with the characters. And that plays out in knowing glances and interactions directly with the camera that I think draw you in. Others have tried to copy this format, but nobody has done it as well as The Office, I would say, until now. I think the paper is just as effective with this format. Also, as I said, Oscar is back. Now, at first, it just seemed like that was the only actor they could get to return. But no, one of the greatest surprises of the paper is that they actually have a plan for Oscar. To see him flourish at this newspaper is one of the greatest joys of the show. I won't say how, but to see him slowly find his voice and his own joy, which culminates in a surprisingly touching, brief monologue in episode 10. I don't want to give anything away, but it just blew me away. I was so moved. That will stay with me, I think. That, again, I think it's the most, of a number of nice things this show does, I think that is by far and away the most surprising and the most beautiful. I think it's as beautiful as when Michael Scott, leaves, when, that episode where he leaves Dunder Mifflin. I mean, it was just that poetic. It was amazing. But don't worry, Oscar's not leave. You'll see. But beyond Oscar, there are very few callbacks to The Office. I mean, they leave it open for if the show continues, but in many ways, the paper, it wants to stand on its own, and it is a very different show in some key and important ways. And I'm going to tell you right now what those are. Okay, here's what I'd say are the two biggest changes between The Office and the paper. So first off, in The Office, what they did at Dunder Mifflin was intentionally trivial and mattered nothing to the story. They just needed an excuse for everyone to come to the office and not have to work too hard, right? It was just always in the background. But here, the paper is not just a commentary on office life in 2025, but it's also a commentary on the current state of news. Oh, I loved this. The opening credits are amazing. I never skip them once. And they're a Cheers-style montage of old photographs of people using newspapers in every way possible except actually reading them. The commentary on the current state of news, both from the reader perspective and the perspective of journalists trying to keep it alive, is extremely well done. For example, and it's very funny the way they do it. I'll give you one example. There's one episode where they find themselves competing with a college student who runs a blog all by himself. The commentary on how he has no costs. He's just a dude pushing print. And yet they have, they have like pensions and all that stuff. It was really, really well done. And he's beating the crap out of them in circulation or readers. That was just fantastic. I also learned a lot about how current print journalism works. I was not familiar with some of the things about the newswire. And for instance, I'll tell you one little other small thing, that some small newspapers just grab articles from the newswire. They don't even write them themselves, which I thought was pretty shocking. But they also focus on some of the good elements of local journalism as well. And since they're starting a paper basically from scratch here, they're just like, why don't we start a paper? That's a lot of fun for the viewer because you're like, how would you run a paper? And what story would you want to write? Like, how would you do it? And it makes you feel that maybe you could. So I think there's a good engagedness with the audience in that way as well. Okay, so what's the other big change? In The Office, there were the regular main characters, and then everybody else, the other people who worked there, were supposed to be caricatures that just were in the background of the regular characters' lives. I mean, occasionally we would learn a little about them, but we never really explored them as actual characters. But not here. I think that is a wonderful change. Here, every single character, while funny with their own quirks, also has a rich backstory and goals. Every character feels fleshed out. And I personally think that's much more interesting and respectful to everybody involved. I just really liked that change a lot. And that's something that always bothered me a little bit about the original Office. So let's talk about the cast. There are, of course, still lead characters, but instead of a Michael Scott as the lead, they've made a Jim-style character the lead, although he's also slightly out of touch, not because he's a well-intentioned idiot like Michael was, but because he comes from a wealthy background and has little experience in the real world or with journalism. They do that in a very good way, but he's all heart, and he shares Michael Scott's good intentions and enthusiasm, so he is a little bit like Michael in that regard. Domhnall Gleeson, forever famous for his glorious hissy fit in Star Wars. I thought about that many times while watching him here. Is fantastic. Oh, he's so good. He's funny and has lots of heart. Very Jim. And he has, and like Jim, he has a will they, won't they romance set up with Chelsea Frey, which is set up from episode 1. So I'm not giving anything away there. She's a former soldier who is the only one there with, besides, I think Domhnall Gleeson's character only studied journalism, and you'll find out why he gets the gig. But anyway, she is a former soldier who worked for her military newspaper or newsletter, so she's the only one who even has just a little bit of experience. She's a lot edgier and more sarcastic than Pam, but oh boy, do they have amazing melt-your-heart chemistry. Oh, so good. If you like romances, this is a really good one. There are other Office romances as well, but I'll let you discover those for yourself. Because also they're revealed as the series continues. Well, again, this one is established from the get-go. Now, let me tell you my favorite character on the show. Sabrina Impacatore from The White Lotus. I had no idea she was this funny. She is a very gifted comedian, and I actually really like her outfits. I think they're great. They're just, she's a little bit from the school of Catherine Hahn of comedy, some of the same choices, I think. I just love her. I think Catherine Hahn, in some ways could have played this role too. I didn't like her at first, though, I have to warn you. First episode, I didn't understand why Domhnall Gleeson didn't fire her. But I'm glad he didn't, because I came to love her character. In some ways, I would actually say she's the Michael Scott. Childish and unwilling to accept a world where she's not the center of attention, right? But oh so fun to be around. A key difference between her and Michael Scott is that Michael Scott was just unaware. But I think that this character, you come to understand why she is lying to herself sometimes in the way that she does. It's really an amazing character. And you learn more and more about her as the show progresses and she becomes increasingly sympathetic with, again, you better understanding her motivations. Tim Key, I would say he's doing an excellent Ricky Gervais impression. I don't think he's actually ever worked with Ricky Gervais before, but he's definitely, I was like, is he playing Ricky Gervais? While Melvin Gregg and Romana Young also really stand out. I loved their characters. Alan Harvey also does a fantastic job as a top exec who's ultimately responsible for the paper. The paper is a subsidiary for a larger company that has several divisions all in the same building. And so Alan Harvey, his role evolves. He becomes a little bit, he has to give approval for some things, but he becomes involved and his role evolves in interesting ways as the show progresses. And his character came to be Really, really interesting. So I loved the paper. I hope you'll stick around till the very end of this video because I think I had a really poignant epiphany when doing my notes, and I want you to experience it with me. So, and don't worry, again, no spoilers. But it's not a carbon copy of The Office. Would anyone want that, right? Would it even be possible? Could you possibly recapture that magic? Probably not. I think this is a great new direction of using the style of the iconic original to tell a new story in a new age where every character is respected while retaining the humor and the heart that the original The Office had. This show will still make you laugh and make you care about new characters, but hopefully will also make you think about the state of modern journalism and small town stories and how they're still incredibly important and meaningful. And this is where my epiphany comes in. In the original Office, Scranton was always a punchline. But here, there is a tremendous amount of dignity in the way Toledo is depicted, and that exciting things can still happen here too, in Toledo, if you dare to dream. So often Hollywood has their characters say, if only they could get to the big city. You don't have to leave to go to the big city. You can stay home. You can stay where stay where you were, where you are, where you've lived your whole life, and still do incredible things right there. And I just thought that was an amazing message. And one of the things is not only your ability to dream and to will it to happen, but you can't do it alone. You need a good group of people to work with, like the ones maybe at your office. And I really, really liked that. And you know what makes it even more poignant? Oh my gosh, get ready. This is what Michael Scott had always dreamed and hoped would happen to Dunder Mifflin. And that's what was always driving him. That was his good intention, to have something extraordinary happen in Scranton. So it's just that so often The Office was laughing at some of the people who worked there and where they were and what they did. But here, funny things happen, and sometimes you have to laugh at yourself in situations, but they're not laughing at anyone or anything. And I really, really like that. So that's my review of the paper. Again, all 10 episodes drop this Thursday on Peacock, and I bet you finish them. I think, for sure by the end of the weekend, but I bet you finish it before the weekend even starts. Thursday, Friday, you finish. All right, so that's my review. Share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.